We have in Lockheed right now, there are craft that can go to Mars in a few hours. Right now in Lockheed. And this show is talking about like the aliens are traveling at certain percentages of the speed of light. That was one problem I had with it, is the engineering and physics. The other problem I had is the whole show took place within the context of a very reductionist, materialist paradigm that did not acknowledge psi, didn't acknowledge ESP and psychokinesis, and the fact that these aliens would probably have these abilities, you know, to a much greater degree than terrestrial humanity.
Right.
So these were, you know, some plot points that I had a problem with, but it was entertaining for sure.
How do you know that Lockheed has this technology that we can get to Mars in a couple hours?
So I know a guy who has been to one of these facilities. I don't think I should mention who he is, but he is, let's say...
Not Jack Sarfati.
I'm sorry, Jack. No disrespect.
Love you, Jack.
Yeah. There's a reason that guy hasn't been dealt in. Okay. The reverse. I mean, not the least of which is that he goes out and publicly advertises everything that anyone ever tells him. So, you know, I don't think that Lockheed or Northrop or anyone would be willing to deal him into any of these reverse engineering programs. But I know this guy who was involved in the military intelligence at a high level. And actually, I know two different people who've been to this facility. And they say that, Lockheed has, I think, some assets in Nevada, but they have a lot of corporate facilities in California, in the state of California. And supposedly there is this shack on the side of a highway in California that looks like some nondescript warehouse, small warehouse. And you go into this warehouse, and the whole floor of the warehouse is an elevator. And it drops Lord knows how many hundreds of feet, and you're inside of basically a facility carved out of rock, deep underground.
Yeah.
And what this guy said is that they are not only reverse engineering craft from retrieved debris in this facility, but they're actually training pilots to fly them. And he told me that the main problem that they have in that training program is that the pilots experience extreme disorientation because of the warping of space-time by these craft. In other words, they discovered early on, and this is, I think, one of the main reasons, and we can get into this in much more depth if you want. This is one of the main reasons this technology is being hidden, because they discovered very early on that these are not simply devices with propulsion systems capable of navigating space very quickly. Like they can take you from New York to Australia and, right? They're flying time machines. They warp time as they traverse space.
Right.
And our pilots don't know how to handle that. They have a very hard time. They get disoriented, temporally disoriented. They get their sense of the passage of time gets really messed with.
How do you know this wasn't just some sort of intelligence agent or intelligence operative trying to disseminate some wacky information like the other guy?
Well, if I were to tell you who it was, I think most people wouldn't think that. But all I can tell you...
That's the problem with this whole topic. That is the fundamental problem with this whole UFO topic, is because so many people have such crazy, outlandish claims, and every single one of them, almost every single time, they're saying that this person, they can't divulge where they got the information, who the person is. And that's why this topic has been so frustrating for me.
I'll tell you at dinner who he is.
Okay.
So he was, but I'll tell you this, he was an extremely salt-of-the-earth person. And he was involved in the military intelligence community for decades. And anyway, I'll just leave it at that. But one of the funny things is he showed me this model that they had been using back in the it looked like maybe it was something from the 60s, to teach these pilots how much time dilation there is per the amount of space that they've traversed in these vehicles. It was like some kind of a gyroscopic device. And it showed that if you traverse, this much distance in space, there's this much dilation in time. And the reason he had this thing is because it was antiquated. It was like from the 60s, and they weren't using it anymore. They had ripped it out, and it was like an heirloom, you know. Yeah. And they basically gave it to him as a keepsake. So, which I found interesting. And I tried to take a picture of it, but he picked it up and took it away from me. So anyway, he told me he went down into this facility and that they're reverse engineering stuff, and that they're trying to train pilots in how to fly these reverse engineered zero-point energy craft. But okay, what's the really important thing about that is that on a theoretical level, I've written extensively in Closer Encounters about how UFOs are actually time machines. And if you really stop and think through that carefully, you realize why, under the current socio-political conditions, this technology can't be released. With the kind of society we have, domestically, globally, with the state that humanity is in at the present time, the release of that kind of technology into the public sphere would be utterly catastrophic, right? I mean, you can't give Tom, Dick, and Harry a time machine to put in their garage. You see, that's the thing. It's not like these are Jetsons cars that just, fly you across country really fast. They allow you to traverse different epochs in human history. And I think one of the reasons that our history is so messed up, when you look at these really regressive, tyrannical religious belief systems and the kinds of political structures that formed around them and that were fortified by them, I think a lot of what's going on there is that our timeline has been manipulated. It's been manipulated at all junctures, from the present far into the future, right? So the technological singularity is this moment when you have a convergent advancement of all kinds of technologies, from genetic engineering to nanotech to artificial intelligence, cybernetics, and so forth. And they start to advance exponentially, so that it's no longer a curve slowly sloping up, right? It becomes a spike on a graph. The curve becomes a spike. There's such an acceleration in the development of these technologies, and any one of them facilitates breakthroughs in the others at such a speed where all of them converge in a way that the human mind is no longer capable of wrapping itself around. And we call it a singularity or a spike on the graph of the history of human technological development, because past that spike, we can't project anymore from the past into the future. It's a limit on our human capacity to project what future developments may take place on the other side of that singularity, right? And so, for example, today you're seeing AI crack problems in genetic engineering, in gene sequencing, and crack problems in nanotechnological engineering that we've never been able to work our way through. And so all of these things are reinforcing each other, and within about 10 to 20 years from now, the kind of zero-point energy that Lockheed is working on is going to be a physics theorem that AI arrives at in the public sphere, and that basically any competent industrial base could actualize using the latest nanotechnology. I mean, the singularity represents a moment when it's no longer possible to hide various lines of scientific research and technological development, okay? Because you're going to have such a tremendous convergence of these different technologies that, you can basically ask the artificial intelligence, look, here's what I want to develop. There's whatever mercury, thorium, zero-point energy device. Given your existing knowledge base in physics and nanotech and so forth, give me the schematic for it. We're a decade away from that at most right now. So we face a real serious crisis, because that means we're a decade or two away from Tom, Dick, and Harry having a time machine in their garage. And that means the disintegration of our current social fabric.
Got a flyer from the School of Engineering inviting me to a lecture by Ben Rich.
Ben Rich was the director of Lockheed's Skunk Works for 16 years. He oversaw a number of USAPs that were secretly managed at the Skunk Works, including, most notably, the development of the F-117 stealth fighter.
Ben shared a slide set of about 40 slides of different things, starting with the U-2 spy plane, going all the way up to the stealth fighter at that time, mentioning that he couldn't talk about the other secret stuff. But when he ended his talk, he had a slide of a black disc zipping off into outer space. And he ended this talk with these words: "We now have the technology to take ET home."
So you have to have vision, and you have to have the guts and the courage to go out past the steps and do something of any value. And we have to go past our grasp.
And we asked him questions about it. You know, what did you mean when you said we have the technology to take ET home? Ben shared three major things that I think are worthy of research by researchers worldwide at this point in time. The first was we've somehow figured out how to do interstellar travel already. It's known. The second point he made was that there was an error in the equations. My suspicion is it's probably Maxwell's equations for electromagnetic theory. The third thing he said was, how does ESP work? And I was really kind of startled because I didn't know what to say. But I blurted out, I don't know, all points in time and space are connected. And he looked me back in the eye and he said, that's how it works.